You don't have to be too much of a detective to realize that, TV marketers have been ever more challenged in recent years to continually find new audiences, all in the wake of even more program and entertainment fractalization, as well as content and things everywhere else. For many, there are plenty of tools for them to figure out how to do some of this, to find audiences, social media and the like. But, we're all wondering, is that all there is to it? How important is a network's own air time these days? And should there be readjustments here? These are some of the questions we'll hopefully ask today. We'll start maybe with Carol, just sitting right here.
Sure.
Okay. What do you think about, when you take a look at the whole cluttered entertainment environment when it comes to TV program promotion? What can be done to solve the problem? Or maybe how do you go into it? What's your overall philosophy and strategy when, your network comes with a new property, a new marketing agenda that you need to focus on?
I think I have it a little easier than my friends over here, because the sports world's a bit different than the entertainment world. Much of sports is destination TV. When you want to watch that game, and it's Wednesday night, and you want to watch the NBA game, you're going to tune into ESPN. And so in some ways, our world's a little different. That said, there's a lot of sports studio shows that we air, and driving that awareness and people to want to tune in regularly to those shows. Therefore, that's a little more comparable than really the live sports. And we're fortunate that in the sports world, every day there is sports news. Every day there are scores. Every day there's a trade or an injury. And so people check in pretty regularly with our properties, whether it's SportsCenter, whether it's Score Center mobile app, whether it's ESPN.com. So we kind of get them every single day. It's a habit. And of course, we encourage that habit. And then when they're on channel in our different with our different channels, we can then share with them what tonight's game is, or what tomorrow's matchup is, or do you know you could watch that game live on your tablet or your mobile phone with Watch ESPN. So I would say that we're very fortunate that what we offer is really a daily habit of many, many people already.
Walter, is that part of the answer, to make it a daily habit? Keep people coming back?
I think so. I mean, I think, we also are somewhat unique, perhaps, in the sense that the core target for Comedy Central, which is young guys, for them, comedy is so intrinsic to who they are. In fact, there's some incredible research that says for young guys that their taste in comedy, they say, says more about them than their taste in music, than their favorite sports team, than their religion. It's incredible how much they kind of self-identify with comedy. And so, the opportunity as the preeminent comedy brand for young guys is to serve up what they're looking for, no matter what the platform, and to be available to them. They are seeking out comedy. Now, they're seeking it out, obviously, on every platform, but we are there for them, and I think as a result, we have the opportunity, when they do come to us, to obviously move them around to our various platforms. So we are unique in that way. It's not, in a sense, it's not difficult to get young guys to be interested in comedy content. Our job, as you've suggested, is to break through the competitive clutter and make sure they know what we're offering on any given day.
Ellen, is it a breakthrough situation in a cluttered environment?
Well, I think that, we take a slightly different tack from a marketing perspective around clutter. And I think, what we're looking to do, a little bit what Carol said, if we can create an event around something, the return of Mad Men being a perfect example, that was an event, and we wanted to sort of market to that event. But I think, in general, the way we approach our marketing is, and the fact that we're an entertainment brand, I think, is really salient, but we want our marketing materials to be entertaining in and of themselves, and I think that's how we cut through the clutter. If the marketing materials have that, whatever that sort of creative idea is that informs it, I think you get a ripple effect. You get the message out there, but then you're sort of amplifying that message because people are covering the marketing as well as sort of the thing that you're marketing.
Ellen.
I agree. I think it's a much harder time right now, especially for some of us, our entertainment nets. Unlike sports, you don't always have to watch it real time. So with the DVR, we even have more challenges with on-air, which makes it even more critical that the storytelling you're saying in your marketing materials and your promotion materials are every bit as compelling. It's also a time when we're looking for more strategies that promote real-time viewing. So if that is creating events, why you have to be there live, why you have to participate at the moment of the airing. And a lot of that has to do with social. So we've looked more and more at social strategies and tactics in order to make our premieres more engaging. But it's also about ensuring that the storytelling that we're doing in the promos and in the marketing, whatever it is, off-channel, out of home, digital, is every bit as compelling as the storytelling in the actual content of the shows.
Howard, how do you view the world from Nielsen's point of view? You've done a lot of work in this area.
Yeah, so, well, first of all, I think you're right. It's a super competitive environment. I had someone on my group run an analysis, just counting the spots that run on all of your guys' cable network air. In the last year, there were 500,000 GRPs that were run for promos. So that's counting your own stuff.
Is that just cable or broadcast? Or
that was just cable.
Wow.
That was just cable. So, you get a sense of sort of competing within that. I think part of the challenge that you guys all face is the idea of, the balance of doing a really good job of reminding your loyal viewers what's on tonight and keeping, it's almost recirculating that, but also realizing that that's not all you need to succeed, and having the right paid strategies in the right place, at either social or in paid media, that really do a good job of helping to complement what you're doing on your own air. So I think that's part of the challenge and the solution that's out there, which is really thinking about your guys' world as integrated media strategy.
Absolutely.
Yeah. When you're taking a look at that, and you mentioned that, there sounds to be that's a lot of GRPs. But yet, Dave Morgan in the room would talk about that there is still a lot of value with on-air, depending on how you use it. So where does that leave sort of on-air promotion? I know we're going to talk about social here in a second, but like a lot more delve. So where does that leave the value of it? Walter, you want to take a shot?
Yeah, listen, I think there's no question that the best place to market television is on television. I think that is absolutely true. But I'll qualify that by saying when we talk about marketing television on television, what we're really talking about is the impact of a video promotion, if you will, right? And the truth is, you can do a lot of that video promotion now off your air. So in fact, when we look at campaign levels, a huge part of what we look at clearly is what we get in terms of on-air GRPs, but we are buying a lot of traditional television GRPs, if you will, in the digital space. And the impact of commercials, of what we think of as TV commercials or TV promos in the digital space is absolutely tremendous. So I think, as a way to, if you will, augment the GRPs we are able to generate on our own air, we think about GRPs in a broader sense than just TV-generated GRPs. We think about GRPs in the TV space and the digital space.
Linda.
Well, I think there's no question having a television network available to you is a wonderful advantage that we all have, and on-air promotion is just an enormously valuable tool. But I think one of the things that's interesting for us is as we're moving into original programming that may attract a slightly different audience from our core audience, on-air promotion can do some very heavy lifting to bring a breadth of audience, but it may not bring a specialized audience, or it will bring again, using AMC, The Walking Dead appealed to younger men. At the time, there weren't a lot of younger men necessarily watching AMC. So our off-air media was focused on getting those younger men to the network, whether it was digital or whether it was other television, primarily digital though, of course, but our air was used to bring in that broader audience.
Ellen, do you find the same thing when it comes to getting your mostly women viewers?
Yeah, I'm going to agree with these guys. The best platform is our air. I've already got a nice Bravo fan base that's going to Bravo, so the best way for me to reach them is through my own promo time. But in order to expand that reach, that's when I go to other networks. I'll look for something big, let's say a Mad Men premiere, and I'll try to hijack that. No, I would never do that.
There you go.
Ellen.
Yeah, I totally would. But I look for other events where I think that people are viewing and are excited to view, and then would also be the same type of fan base that I want to bring over to my network. So I look for events, whether they're on air or whether they're in the digital space. There are certain really fun opportunities in digital that are big and loud and quick. And those are opportunities for me to get the new viewers to sample, because sampling, especially when you have a video content as your product, I have a lot of sampling opportunities. So I'm looking for those areas that I can put my contact out there that's really compelling and relevant.
So,
I think we have a little bit different approach. We certainly use some of our on-air inventory for promos, but we really focus a lot on more image campaigns. So our Monday Night Football campaign, our This is Sports Center campaign, our Baseball Tonight. We have Sprint Nationwide right now with NASCAR. And that's where we work with Wieden and Kennedy. We do these great spots people love, much higher production value, a campaign across the entire season, 3 to 6 spots for that campaign. That's building up our brand, ESPN, our association, say, with the NBA. We tend to use a fair amount of humor. We leverage our talent. It reminds you what you love about basketball, for instance. So we do some of these image campaigns across the season, and then we sprinkle in the promos. And we do so we certainly do on-air promos as well, but we really try to take some of that on-channel TV time to do more of the image campaigns and brand building and really focus on our brand. And then we use our mobile, our online, our radio, our print. We're so multi-channel. I've got a lot of different on-channel opportunities to do the promos, because then you're day part mixing. You can geo-target based on, who the matchup is. We're using Facebook advertising because you can really target certain teams and fans of certain teams. So we'll go on-channel or off-channel for those promos, especially because of the targeting capabilities, to really get unique to, especially if it's a sports matchup, those teams and those fans. Sure. But again, I think we're all agreeing that TV time is awesome. We're just tend to use it more for more of our branding and imaging campaigns.
Yeah, a couple of thoughts. One is, I think each of your CFOs to some degree probably think your own air can accomplish more than it can accomplish in terms of sustaining and growing ratings. So, you do have that dynamic that you need to overcome. And no surprise that a research guy would say measure, that if you measure it, you could, you could help convince them otherwise. One of the things I think, the way I think about it is just making sure you're using it sufficiently and not overusing it. We ran a campaign for a mid-sized cable network, relaunching a show, and they reached their own air reached their loyal viewers 15 times. Now, you don't need to remind your loyal viewers 15 times something that's on. And if you think about it from a measurement perspective, think about the ROI to your company of all of those spots that got from 10 frequency to 15 frequency. And if you had put that money back, if you put that weight back into the ad sales. Because
ideally you only need 3.
Ideally, based on England in 1961, you only need 3. But there's a point of saturation, and it does feel, as I talk to different networks, that they just feel too comfortable with what their air can accomplish. And you could be more precise and say, hey, ad sales guys, here's some...
Sometimes for producers, they want to see the spot. Sometimes for other people, they want to see the spot. And everyone wants to, you have movie producers, they want to see the billboards they're driving to the studio, right? You think that's historically, there's still a lot of those biases there,
Well,
I'm just asking.
Yes.
Okay.
But here's the thing. The stuff that we do that makes the producer happy is minuscule. You don't really have to do a lot to do that. But I will say, to your point, scheduling your own promo time is an art. And it is something that we spend hours every week looking at the promo inventory and what shows we're going to support and how often they're getting supported and, what's not getting supported. Because Bravo has grown incredibly fast over the last couple of years because we've increased our original hours. And by increasing our original hours and numbers of shows, that means that each show doesn't get the 15 promos per week that we used to get them. So one of the things that you do have to do once you get more and more original hours is you have to look at what is the most efficient and effective way of that promo time. And you also have to figure out promo time versus what you're giving to your advertisers. Because you'd be amazed at how many advertisers want promo time. No.
Walter, you had a thought there?
No, I was going to say, this whole notion of measuring promo time is not a new idea. It's been talked about for many years, and I think, for better or for worse, as media marketing people, we have not ever been great at being quite as precise in the way we use our promo time over the years. And when we all, when we spend money on media that we buy, we tend to be very specific about what we're looking for, and when we work with media agencies, we tend to have them go back and make revisions and give us more and more data. And then I think, generally speaking, we're not nearly as focused on our own airtime. And I think that's probably because historically, promo time was widely available. There was tons of it, and I don't know about the rest of the panel, but that has been shrinking over the years, as you'd expect. And so now the value of that promo time, in a sense, is even greater than it ever was. And I think the need to be measured in terms of how we use it.
Because maybe at one time the cable networks were so small couldn't sell their ad time, maybe. Might as well use it with promo time.
Yeah, I mean, for whatever reason. But certainly it's shrunk, and I think it's shrunk across every network. So it's much more valuable in that sense.
Well, and I think the process, you're right, and we actually work a lot with Nielsen to measure our promo time, and we go into Ad Lab in Austin, and we're measuring the impact of promos. So we've really gotten to the science of that, and we have quite a rigorous promo priority process that has key stakeholders from across the company. We have a monthly promo priority meeting. We have a weekly Friday promo priority meeting, and it's for TV, it's our digital, it's all our channels. It's our mobile, it's our radio, and because what was a priority maybe the beginning of the month, you might change. Priorities change. Things in the sports world change. Programs are doing better or not as well. And so we have quite a rigorous promo priority process, and we have some heated debates and some really good discussions. And
for both the media and the creative?
Absolutely, but it is programming, production, digital media, the producers. But that's how we work to say it's not what producer yells the loudest or puts on air what he wants on his show. This puts it as a level playing field, and everyone has a chance to share why their properties may be a priority in their mind, but it's a very cross-functional group of people deciding what's the company's priority, not any one group or any one show. And that's worked out extremely well. And then we actually monitor, what gets aired and what drop-ins and what promos are getting aired, and et cetera. And then, we part of that meeting may be if ad sales needs more inventory. Okay, now we're just giving X number of GRPs back to ad sales. We got to reprioritize some. But that, I think, has been a real change in the last several years to just make it very open dialogue, the focus on the company's priorities, and no one person of influence kind of over promoting their properties.
One recent survey concerning social media, we get to your important part of the conversation here about social media, was that 80%, I guess it was a TVGuide.com survey, along with someone that said 80% of people use social media, to keep the shows they want on the air. Sounds like they want to keep those shows which may not be doing so well on the air. Maybe a Community on NBC or something like that. And to me, I'm like, man, so this is just, it's not to keep SportsCenter on the air necessarily, or necessarily Grey's Anatomy or The Voice or American Idol. So, what does that say to you? I mean, if all your efforts regarding social media are to, maybe TV shows which, are, fan favorites, yet you want to use this tool effectively. Does that tell you anything? No? Maybe not. Maybe nothing.
I mean, I think
that only helps the weak shows.
I'll tell you where social's good. Not necessarily in keeping or killing a show per se, but I certainly hope producers are listening to what people are saying about their shows in the social world, because we all know that listening in social is fabulous. Is it quantifiable? Good research? No, it's completely biased. But there's still, all things being equal, I think it's great for companies, whether as marketers, as communications people, as media folks, as producers, to listen to what your fans or your detractors are saying about your show, because that's, you're getting your pulse on what people like. It's real-time results. I mean, it's what other people are talking about, and I think from that standpoint, I don't know how much that social has an impact on keeping a show on air or not, but I do think that that voice is and should be heard by companies.
Maybe more to the point, Ellen, you want to say something first?
I agree that while we can't directly link a Nielsen rating to social, we have just started creating the opportunity to use social media to actually change the content of the show. Not really, but we've created the social editions, which we launched recently. And basically, we've allowed our fans to watch the premiere of The Real Housewives of Atlanta, which is one of our buzzy housewifey shows, and I'm hoping all of you know it. And they can tweet in, they can Facebook post, they can Google+, whatever they want to do, whatever social medium they love, they can actually start talking about the show as it goes into through the hour. And then what we said is we will curate your posts, your tweets, whatever, and then you can see and watch the story that our fans are telling against the show during an encore that week. And what we found is it helps us in two ways. One is people want to see their 15 minutes of fame and whether their tweets or posts get up on air. Everyone, I'm sure you've all experienced it. When tweets go on air, people like to watch them. But also it changes the story. So now the content is new, and we've seen people watch again, and we've seen double-digit increases in our encores. And we've been having some hard times. I'm not sure if you guys have, but we've had hard times in encores because of things like DVR, where you don't necessarily have to go to the encore. But with the level of social and creating a new content opportunity for our fans to get a whole new experience with the show through social, we've actually seen, anecdotally, because I got Nielsen next to me, we've actually seen a ratings list on the encores that have a social edition attached to them. So it's new, and it's anything new, you never know if that's what the continuity level of is, but we've seen some really great impact from it. And I think it's because in a world where co-creation is becoming more and more prevalent, this is a first road to it, and it's a test that we're doing.
Yeah, I think I would take issue with the fact that social's value is just to save shows that are sort of on the bubble, because I think what, again, from our perspective, social is, it is a sort of a literal continuing of the conversation that you want people to have with your shows. I mean, that's a proxy for passion, that's a proxy for engagement. So the fact that social exists as a mechanism to to capture that passion and to further that passion, again, that for us, that's just a huge tool.
Yeah, I mean, I'll pipe in and say, it's actually, in some ways, it's amazing to me that we, as an industry, are still even debating whether social has any impact. I mean, for years and years and years, we've talked about water cooler talk. We've talked about how the best advertising for a show is people's personal recommendations. And this has been said before, all social media is the water cooler on steroids. And so our view is, if we felt for years that people talking to their friends about stuff they loved was successful or was effective, why would the ability for people to talk to thousands of people at once and spread the word not be successful? I think it's self-evident. And our view has been, our job as a media brand is to stimulate those conversations, to give people things to talk about. I mean, we were the first TV network to have a hashtag on screen for the full length of the show in the Trump roast. We've done it in multiple different programs. We are playing with hashtags. Some of our shows will change the hashtag up 2-3 times in the show to reflect the content of the show. To our view is we need to be there to stimulate the conversation. There's nothing but upside in our minds to having people talking about you.
Howard, Ellen alluded to the whole idea about measuring this stuff or the influence on TV ratings. What are the issues surrounding that? Is it that it's word of mouth and it's hard to quantify this? I mean, you can't link that activity
Yeah,
to a rating point?
So we actually, because we have a certain percent of our people meter panel where we're also measuring their in-home internet use, we do have some visibility into this. The stuff that we have the hardest time really getting line of sight to is what people do in their news feeds on Facebook. So I could see, we could correlate increase in Facebook fan page visits with increase in ratings, things like that. We can correlate when you're advertising, using Facebook as an advertising vehicle, how that impacts. Much harder to get line of sight just because of sort of what we have visibility into. But these guys are right. I mean, we see it's correlation, it's not causation, but we see there's a direct relationship to the amount of buzz to a show and the rating level. But it's like Walter said, it's driving people to talk about a show, which drives deeper engagement.
And I think we're all agreeing, word of mouth marketing. We know a recommendation from a trusted friend has probably the biggest impact of all. It's interesting because we debate this at ESPN a fair amount about does social drive ratings, and everyone's trying to measure that. And it's interesting because I think we might all agree that it's certainly going to keep your head in the game. You're going to continue to watch that show if you are socially involved, including a 3-hour sporting event or a 4-hour NASCAR race, which is a long time for people to stay tuned in. But if you are socially involved and you're talking, smack with your friends and you're debating a player or your team versus theirs, you're really engaged. What I think is interesting is, especially maybe with Twitter, with the timeliness, or Facebook, if you get a tweet and you realize that in the third quarter you got a game, like it's an amazing matchup. It may not even be teams you care about, but if there's a great moment and you got a great game, I think that's what gets people to tune in when they may not ordinarily, but now they know there's something crazy going on, right? Because that's pretty easy to do because it's so timely. And that, for us as marketers who back in the day, remember we actually had like a marketing calendar and we plan out our promos, and this is so real time. It's 24/7. How fast can you react? And our poor social guys with sports being 24/7, 365, they never get to go to bed. It's just because it's so timely. But now marketing is trying to react and be proactive at the same time. And I think that's really interesting for us as marketers is how do you deal with that real-time nature, especially in sports, but across, many, many different entertainment channels of that need to be ready and respond immediately to take advantage of a situation or the buzz. I think it's a kind of profoundly changed marketing.
Is there something you might look at something in the Real Housewives and see things, content, what people are saying? Do you then go back and say, oh, let me redo that spot, or let me is that something where or is that never really? That's not really part of the issue.
Well, because the shows are shot, and by the time they're aired,
I realize
it's hard.
that. I realize that.
But for a show like Watch What Happens Live, and the keyword it's live, and it's an after show, they literally are reacting to what people are saying at the moment that they're saying. So Andy Cohen, who's the host of the show, he's literally getting cards and in his earpiece, the tweets, the Facebook posts, all those things that are happening. And so when things happen with a guest and people are tweeting about it, he'll actually be able to say to the guest, you know what, they're not digging your shoes right now. And we'll have a guest, take off her shoes. And what that does is the participation and the way the show actually goes on, it's not scripted anymore. That show really does change as to how the fans react to what he's saying. It's an amazing thing. In terms of when we see things for the Real Housewives, what we'll do is we'll note it, we'll mark it, and when the Real Housewives are out there and talking, because they're water cooler in and of themselves, they understand what their fans' expectations are. It might change a way if they came out with a certain statement that perhaps their fans didn't love. It might make them think twice about it. It might not, I don't know. But those are things that fans come in to play. If a certain storyline is not something fans love, when we look at other opportunities as we're producing new shows, we might say, oh, fans don't like it when, I don't know, we're shopping in a mall. I'm not sure. And maybe we won't do that again. So everything that's in the social sphere, we take into account, depending on which department you're in. There's no department that isn't affected by the conversations around the network.
I was going to say, I guess in a sense, the boldest statement one can make about social is if you're a brand in 2012 and there's no conversation happening about you in the social space, good luck to you.
Okay, we looked at the new media. Let's go actually back to the older media, you know. Let's look at radio and magazines and newspapers. Linda, you were saying for the first time, you know, for Mad Men, you never did a Vanity Fair print campaign? Was that right?
Yeah.
Or is that you really focused on it heavily for this season?
Well, this was a conversation that Wayne and I had just, you know, sort of preliminary to this. And I guess the point that I wanted to make was there are lots of elements available to us as marketers as we're building a media plan. And so, you know, available media, anything, I mean, whatever you choose to make as a piece of media to get your message out, you want to craft something particular to it. So I would not dismiss old media. It doesn't play the same role, perhaps, that it played for television networks 10 plus years ago. But, you know, for us with Mad Men, as I said at the beginning of this, our marketing of Mad Men this year was about sort of marketing the event of Mad Men's return. So it was much more an environment media play. So yes, for us, we did take an ad in Vanity Fair. We'd never taken an ad in Vanity Fair for TuneIn before, and it wasn't exactly TuneIn. It really was for environment. That was the space we wanted to be in and the people we wanted to reach. And, you know, but the really interesting, and we loved our art and we wanted to showcase it in this, in the print form, but what was also really exciting was that we were able to be in the iPad edition of Vanity Fair. So it's, you know, media plays all sorts of roles, and I do think for any project that any of us are working on, everything is custom built. There's no sort of templatable marketing campaign.
You were going to have an example regarding NASCAR?
Yeah,
Okay.
That's right. So I joke that one of our innovative media buys this past fall was print, because we were trying to reach that real avid NASCAR fan, and in a little bit more rural counties. And how do you reach that avid fan? And you know, through our analysis, we really have found that newspaper. Bought a lot of newspaper in years. We bought newspaper. We actually, at the beginning of the season, polybagged the NASCAR schedule in the newspaper at the home drop, and we saw, you know, double-digit ratings increase, especially in those areas. Overall, across the season, but especially in those markets where we bought newspaper. And so I kind of joke, I was like, wow, that was breakthrough innovation, newspaper. But, you know, it was great because for that target audience and that sport, you could get, you know, the counties you wanted, the audience in the sports section. Worked really well.
Walter, use any old media to get those young men?
Not a lot of newspapers. Not a lot of newspapers.
Huh?
In past lives, yes. Not so much these days. No, I mean, you know, as I said earlier, the one thing about our content and our brand, I mean, young guys love comedy. They consume a ton of comedy. Clearly, they consume a ton of it online, and, you know, no surprise, YouTube's a big part of that. So, you know, when we build a plan, we start by saying what's right for this particular franchise and what's the right opportunity. You know, you may have heard about something we launched back in January called Key and Peele. It was a big new sketch show for us, and we knew in this show that there were a couple of characters, an incredible Obama impersonator and his anger translator Luther. We knew these two characters could absolutely be the best way we could get young guys interested in this franchise. But we knew we needed them to see the full content. We also knew this content would be very, very appropriate for the digital space. So we did a fairly extensive campaign that was entirely digital that happened weeks before the show ever premiered on TV, where we produced and released a whole bunch of Obama Luther videos digitally. We spent money to drive views. We then got a huge amount of sharing on them. And ultimately, we had more people sample this new TV show digitally in terms of the premiere than actually watch the premiere itself. The premiere did a huge rating, but we actually had several more million people sample it online, which was terrific, and the show as a result has continued to grow and has been a huge hit for us. So in our case, we knew this was a property that if we could get people to sample in a 2-minute bite would be the best way to sell it. We had a very aggressive plan. We were very deliberate about it. We got millions and millions and millions of views. We're now, I think, up to 13 or 14 million views of this content digitally, and it has turned out to be a huge success for that particular program on every franchise.
And that's where you say sometimes 80 and 90% of your marketing efforts can be around even social, or video.
Digital, yeah. I mean, again, with a young guy target, we know young guys are spending a lot of their time digitally, and so we can be quite aggressive in terms of our percentage of budget. There's certainly campaigns where the majority of the money we have spent off channel has been in digital, but certainly digital is not an afterthought in our plans. It's front and center in our plans.
Just want to say we're going to open it to questions a little bit here, or at least think of few questions you have for our great panelists. And Joe Mandisi has a question.
On that note, digital is such a quick, fast-moving industry now where, kind of the half-life of a new platform is like yesterday Facebook acquired Instagram. And how do you guys sort through all that stuff? Because you must be getting pitched more than the conventional brand marketers do. And do you have a whole team that does nothing but vet the next digital social media gizmo?
We work with Mediate. We have both Wine and Kennedy and Starcom. So when it comes to the off-channel world, we certainly, look to our agencies to help. But we have a lot of young kids out of college who work on my team who, live this day in, day out. So we don't only rely on our agency or our media team. We really rely on everyone to feed us ideas and what they see and what's coming. And then since we've got a lot of digital properties of our own, we have a lot of people who are kind of their fingers in this world. But I think relying on an agency is part of it, but you really want to supplement that as well.
What are the hot next 2 or 3 things that we should know about in this room?
I think it's Mug's game to try to predict what's next and what's hot in the digital space. Obviously, Facebook has made a $1 billion bet that Instagram is going to continue to be hot. I think our experience has been, and my personal experience has been, the best way to keep on top of what's hot in the digital space is to be in the digital space, right? I would say if you're working in this industry, if you're working in marketing, really in any industry, and you're not in social media, and you're not playing around, and you're not spending time checking things out, I think you do that at your peril.
And I think playing around is key. Digital is the place, and some of these new places where you're experimenting. If someone brings something to you and, it is, compared to the rest of your media buy, it's a relatively small percentage, and you just see what happens. I mean, that is the place where you're not necessarily looking for a return on investment unless there happens to be one, and then that's great.
And I also think that you can look at what's being buzzed about. So you look at Mashable, you look at TechCrunch, you look at some of the VC guys that you follow, like a Fred Wilson or whoever, and you see what are they talking about, and you think, oh, well, that's interesting. An obvious one is Pinterest. Okay, I'm sure most brands are now involved with Pinterest. We've been involved with them for about a year. But, and who knows, if they could be solid and keep going. It's a great, simple, fun digital tool. But people have been talking about Pinterest for a while now. And if you're in the digital space, you've heard about them for a while. A year is a while, but whatever. A digital while. And so I think another thing you have to constantly do is say, what is being talked about on the sites? And then go there and see if it's really worth it, and it's what your brand is about and how you could extend into the brand, because there's a lot of cool things that are happening that might not be for your brand. So I think it's a lot about listening, talking to the digital people on your team, and experimenting against it.
Well, I think Ellen's right, because I think some of it is experimenting, because a lot of these new technologies don't have much scale. So in the grand scheme of things, the scale is so minimal. Yet the time spent, it's not really the money, it's the people time, I find. Right. The people resources that you need to dedicate to some of these smaller, newer technical things is hard, right? That's a balance because the scale's not there. So I agree. I think that some of that is putting aside some money or some of people's times to learn and test. So if it does explode and reach a scale where you really want to go into it, you've got kind of a leg up and you've been learning. But I do think you have to be careful, because sometimes you might chase some of these small opportunities and you're putting too much, at least people time, into it. So I think that's a balancing act.
Yeah, there's one thing we're involved in. It's sort of old internet, but there are a bunch of different internet publishers who are looking to find a way to integrate their user base with our TV data. So what they can do is come to each of you guys with very specific targeted campaigns against the sort of specific Nielsen People Meter panelists, not them actually, but models of them that are people watching a lot of Conan O'Brien and 11 O'Clock for Daily Show, things like that. There's a lot of buzz going on in that space.
I will take the bait. It just occurred to me. There is one site that I think is one to keep your eye on. It's one that, again, I discovered through my own social networks. It's called Keek.com, Keek.com. And to me, it feels like likely to be something big, not just because it's a Canadian company, I'm Canadian, but because if you think about social networking, right, Facebook's all about pictures, Twitter is largely about words, Keek is all about video. It's a social network that's video-based. You shoot, I think it's 34 seconds is the maximum video you can post, and you post videos that update people on what you're up to. I think that's one to keep an eye on.
Versus the 140 words, you have
yes.
34 seconds. That's
Exactly.
pretty good. We don't have too much time here unless there's other questions. I want to ask each one of you, how do you find out about new TV shows?
Word of mouth. Online. So, Facebook
Online?
and Twitter.
Walter?
It's hard to pinpoint one place.
Just I was going to, top of mind. I mean,
I would say there's no question social media is probably at the top of the list now.
Okay.
Well, I'm going to give a totally out-of-the-box old media answer. Sides of buses. I have to say, living in New York City, I discover
That's a good point.
all the new television shows walking across 32nd Street and seeing the buses idle.
Howard?
New York Times TV listings.
Oh, there you go. That's old, so there's a one for old media. I like that.
Yeah, no. No. I would say all of those, but actually, I'm in the business of knowing what's on TV, so I have people feeding that to me every day. I'm
That's
looking
okay.
at every trade magazine, and then I'm having, we have our programming production department literally goes out and comes back to us with reports on this is what's coming, this is not coming. So anyway and everywhere I can find
and
Reddit.
Since I live in LA, I'll say billboards because I do drive by a few of them, so that's okay. We're done here. Give these guys a good hand because they did a great job. Appreciate it.